I'm Greg Johnson, the Artistic Director of the Montana Repertory Theater and a professor at the University in Drama Dance. It's my pleasure to be serving as the introducer this evening. And thank you all for coming to hear this fabulous speaker we have this evening. A couple of bookkeeping items. This evening, after the lecture, there will be a question and answer session, and immediately after the question and answer session, we will be going into the lobby for book signing. And if you'd like to chat with John, that would be the time to do it, not to gather around here, but to go into the lobby and to meet him and look at his books and perhaps buy one or two and ask further questions there. So there'll be the lecture, the question and answer period, and then the book signing out there. That's the sequence of the evening, all right? I'm indeed honored and thrilled to be here tonight to introduce this particular guest lecturer for the President's Lecture Series. First, I would like to acknowledge and thank President George Dennison for this evening and the Spear family especially for their generous support. Also, Richard Drake and Kathy Young in the President's office were enormously helpful to all of us in bringing this event to fruition. I regularly attend the President's Lecture Series as it brings to our campus thinkers, academics, and artists of the highest caliber, enhancing the quality of life for us in the university and the Missoula communities. This evening is no exception. I've been aware of John Guare since 1971, when as a graduate student at NYU, under the tutelage of Mel Shapiro, among others, I was invited to a preview of The House of Blue Leaves, directed by Mel. The production changed my perception of the possibilities of theater, and where the imagination can take us if we allow it and encourage it. This concept influenced my professional career in New York for 20 years and certainly influences my teaching in the drama dance department at the University of Montana. House of Blue Leaves is a magical tour of the world of dreams, aspirations, ambition, both national and personal. Along the way, Guare brings us echoes of Shakespeare, Shaw, Thornton Wilder, Sophocles. A great feat. The House of Blue Leaves can be seen this week and next at the Masker Theater as a production of the Drama Dance Department if you want to see the words in action. Mr. Guare's distinguished career spans decades and genres and place. From Broadway to the silver screen, indelibly marked in my consciousness after Blue Leaves are the entire production of 6 Degrees of Separation, which one New York writer described as being about everything. And to the rousing musical version of Two Gentlemen of Verona, to Atlantic City, still one of my favorite films starring Burt Lancaster and Susan Sarandon. Unforgettable. We thank this wonderful artist for bringing us his talents, his stories, and above all, his ever-fertile imagination. I am indeed the lucky and privileged man who has the opportunity to introduce to you one of America's great artists, John Guare.
What a nice time to be here in Montana. I've never been here before, and I'm very, I've seen blizzards, snowstorms, and you're ending it with a blast of sunshine tonight. So it's wonderful to be here and to be so welcomed by your community. I've been looking at the previous lectures on the President's Series, and you've talked about China and Hitler and slavery and the environment, and I'm just here talking about plays tonight. So it's but I hope that my very small bird's eye view of what I'll be being might, in some way, I was thinking, might shed some light on those larger issues about making us see that if you put a microscope on one small aspect of something, that it might reveal truths about a larger thing. Or not, I'm just being pretentious. When confronted with Hitler and China and the environment, I wish I'd heard some of those. Anyway, as I said, my name is John Guare, and I'm very honored to be here in Missoula, Montana today, where I wanted to see something of Montana, and so I was taken to, we went to a town, I thought it was called Poison. I said, what a wonderful town, Poison. And I said, no, that's an L, not an I. Polson, but I like the idea of Poison, Montana. But I ate buffalo today, so I'm a real New York City guy. So I'm just telling you all from, what it's. I've had it. So it is an honor to be here and very exciting to be here. I'm a playwright. I don't write novels or short stories, memoirs, fiction. I'm just a playwright. I'm also a council member of the Dramatists Guild, the organization that represents the interests of more than 7,000 playwrights, lyricists, and composers in America and Great Britain. It's an organization that exists only to protect our copyright, at which there are assaults on any given moment. And because of that, because of being on the Dramatists Guild, and just being in the theater, I meet a lot of producers, the people who put on plays. And I remember years ago, a man who was a very, very important theater producer, he was one of the founders of the off-Broadway movement, very distinguished man, told me, as if he expected me to agree with him, he said that he had great trouble reading plays. He had to have actors read the plays to him before he could make a decision about producing them. How do you read a play? This man said. Plays are so naked. Well, I like that, plays being naked. I was also surprised, but since then other people have confessed that to me, that plays are these hard things to read. It's just these lines, these brief lines of dialogue. There's no description, there's nothing, just these lines. So I teach playwriting at Yale. I think a lot about the writing of plays. And then I started thinking about, because of this man, about the reading of plays. And that's the title of tonight's talk, How Do We Read a Play? Well, what is a play? First of all, well, it's dialogue, right? I mean, Shakespeare writes in Love's Labour's Lost, Act 5, Scene 2, will you hear the dialogue that the two learned men have compiled in praise of the owl and the cuckoo? During the ordeal of auditions, the playwright, waits for the actor to come in and read our dialogue the way we dreamed it. Am I, the playwright, the owl, or the cuckoo? Most of the time, sitting there in the audition room, we, the collective playwright, that's simpler, want to die because the actor who just came in is showing us the God's honest truth of our play. Flat, empty, turn on the gas, head in the oven. But then sometimes the miracle happens. Next, you call out. The next actor comes in, picks up your script. In wonder of wonders, we hear our play done as imagined. This actor knows how to get that laugh, make that hairspring emotional leap. Yes, that's it. My play is alive. It just might work. We jump up and down, at least I do. Are you free? We gush to the actor. When can you start? And sometimes that same blessed experience carries over into the actual performance. The audience leans forward to listen to the actor. This is what we live for. The audience laughs or is breathlessly silent as we intended. God, we treasure, at least I do, those actors who know how to perform our work. After Rex Harrison had a triumph in George Bernard Shaw's Heartbreak House, it's about 20 years ago, an interviewer, but I never forgot this, an interviewer asked him what methods he used to prepare for the role of Captain Shotover. Harrison, discounting Stanislavski and his myriad descendants, said, he had no idea how to investigate a part. He was really quite stupid and couldn't do that sort of investigative work. He simply said the lines over and over until he knew the right way to sing them. And then he sang them the same way every night. Well, the right way to sing them. I like that because when dialogue is working right, meaning when the play is cooking, it is music. When a play is miscast, it sometimes means, and this is the treacherous part of our profession, the actor who was cast simply didn't know how to capture the music of our dialogue. And the play dies. Have you ever heard those legendary recordings of Noel Coward and Gertrude Lawrence made in the 20s of his fantastic play, Private Lives? You really can't know how to play Noel Coward until you've heard these recordings and realize how Coward's music finds its spiritual descendants in the rhythms of Harold Pinter, Edward Albee, David Mamet. Well, is a play then simply brilliant dialogue? Well, of course not. You can write the sharpest, most glittery, wisest, poetic, hilariously dazzling dialogue, but if that dialogue doesn't do its true work and open the dramatic world underneath, it's dead on arrival. DOA. Plato's dialogues. Brilliant, granted, but not dramatic. So, dialogue then is the tip of the iceberg. Dialogue is our way into the energy beneath the surface. Dialogue is that mysterious exterior link into the energy boiling beneath the surface. God, is there a more slippery occupation in the world than writing for the stage? A long list of novelists, from Henry James to Scott Fitzgerald to Thomas Wolfe to Theodore Dreiser to Virginia Woolf to Ernest Hemingway to Jane Austen, have all written plays that have brilliant dialogue and simply lie there. DOA. Ivy Compton Burnett and William Gaddis wrote novels that are entirely made of burnished, dazzling dialogue, but they do not transfer to the stage. A playwright like Eugene O'Neill can write plays where the dialogue is this clotted purple mass on the page, but you put it on stage with the right actors, and the anguish of Eugene O'Neill's music comes alive. Well, then how do plays come to life? John Gielgud, great English actor, was once asked how he chose a part. Oh, he said he never chooses a part. If he responds to the world of the play, he then asks himself, what citizen might he be? Well, you can bet the citizen John Gielgud chose always had the best lines. But what does he mean by the world of the play? Being a citizen of the world of the play? Well, if we're involved in some chaotic mix-up, we might say it was pure Feydeau. If we find ourselves in a mysterious situation that might turn ugly at any moment, we'd say it was like being trapped in a Pinter play. In some autumn afternoon, we find ourselves in a melancholy situation, perhaps friends we haven't seen in a long time. Chekhovian. Snap quiz. A dreamy, delicate woman taking too many discreet sips of the bourbon bottle? Pure Tennessee Williams. Modern would-be cowboys living on the edge? Sam Shepard. Foul-mouthed businessmen? You got it. Pure David Mamet. How do playwrights build these worlds? The only tool a playwright has is dialogue. A play isn't remembered for its theme or its good intentions or the quality of its stage directions. We remember the play for what the characters said while they were doing it. To be or not to be. Attention must be paid. I have always depended on the kindness of strangers. I can't go on. I'll go on. Come up and see me sometime. One of the reasons I revere our Dramatist Guild is knowing we can count Samuel Beckett and Mae West as fellow members. But what makes good theater dialogue? Is it ornate and poetic and fanciful? Barbed? Snappy? Kaufman and Hart plays are an orgy of wisecracks. She has the touch of a sex-starved cobra. Odd Couple? Oscar says something like, you left me a message. I can't take your messiness anymore. I'm going, F you. It took me a whole day to realize it was Felix Unger. But when is a wisecrack theater poetry? What is perfect theater dialogue? Is it the one-liner we wished we had said if only we had the wit, what the French call l'esprit d'escalier? Oh, if only I had said that. Damn. Well, here's my idea of perfect theater dialogue. Elevated, to the great stage poetry. It's Act Two of Chekhov's Uncle Vanya, as translated by Michael Frayn, the British playwright. I trust Frayn's translations of Chekhov because he is a brilliant playwright and he speaks Russian fluently. Sonia, the professor's drab daughter, has a surprising détente with her beautiful young stepmother, Yelena. Sonia says, "I'm so happy, so happy," she's confessing her love for Dr. Astrov. Yelena says, joining in the happiness, says, "I feel like playing the piano. I wouldn't mind playing something right now." Sonia says, "Yes, do." She embraces her mother-in-law, her stepmother, Yelena. "I can't sleep. Please, do play." Yelena says, "In a moment, your father isn't asleep. Music irritates him when he's ill. Go and ask him. If he doesn't mind, then yes, I'll play the piano. Go on." Sonia says, "I'm going." Sonia exits, the sound of the watchman and his dogs in the garden. The watchman calls off, "Ma'am," and Yelena says, "Keep the dogs quiet. The master's not well." And the watchman says, I'll take myself off then," whistles to his dogs, "Hey boy, here boy, here boy." And there's a pause, and the Sonia who has run off, so buoyantly happy, returns to the room, and she says, "No." Curtain. My God, the daring simplicity, the heartbreaking, breathtaking bluntness of that "no." We can't play the piano. Cutting to the essence of their lives is, to me, the essence of theater poetry. In 1987, the National Theater production book for Antony and Cleopatra, Sir Peter Hall talked about Shakespeare's plays, quote, taking place on a high-tempered stage. Well, I like the idea of writing dialogue for a high-tempered stage. Peter Hall talked to the cast about the sensual nature of language. He said, when Shakespeare works, it's when you feel he's inventing these extraordinary metaphors and images out of deep emotion, physicalized in words, words which you can taste, smell, touch. Sometimes this language goes like electricity. At other times it's a bit dry. You have to make the text more new-minted, more necessary, more conjured up. Jesus, I love that phrase, conjured up. Shakespeare's language is so vivid, I still burst out laughing when, say, Cleopatra says of her lover, "Oh, happy horse to bear the weight of Antony." The actor has to act in a way worthy of that line. But the play is the world. Each word of dialogue is the brick, the mortar, the note of music that inspires the world our theatrical collaborators put on stage. The play is the fire, then dialogue is the wood that carries the fire. Dialogue is not an end in itself. Dialogue is the gateway to the interior life of the play. Every image, noun, verb is an instruction to our collaborators, our actors and designers, and to you, to the audience. Let's go to the top of our profession. Can we learn anything from Shakespeare? I asked Nicholas Heitner, the director of the National Theatre in London, what he had to say about Shakespeare's dialogue. Nick's reply was very succinct. He said, all answers to your question are in the John Barton's book, Playing Shakespeare. Do you know it? You don't? Get it. I did. John Barton writes in this essential book, in the Elizabethan theater, the actors knew how to use and interpret the hidden direction that Shakespeare himself provided in his verse or his prose. We don't offer ourselves as high priests, but as explorers or detectives. Well, that phrase, the hidden direction that the playwright provides. Well, let's look at the first 5 pages of Harold Pinter's masterpiece, The Homecoming, which just had a very successful run this past season in New York. The first line of the play is Max, the old man, comes in and says, "What have you done with the scissors?" I said I'm looking for the scissors. Do you hear what I'm saying? Where's the scissors? And his son Lenny looks up, says quietly, "Why don't you shut up, you daft prat?" And Max, the old man, lifts his stick and points it at him and says, "Don't you talk to me like that, I'm warning you." And then a page later, Max remembers, "I used to knock about with a man called McGregor. We were two of the worst hated men in the West End of London. I still got the scars. We'd walk into a place, the whole room would stand up. You never heard such silence? Your mother wasn't such a bad woman, even though it made me sick just to look at her rotten, stinking face. She wasn't such a bad bitch. I gave her the best bleeding years of my life anyway." And Lenny says, "Plug it, will you, you stupid sod? I'm trying to read the paper." And Max says, "I'll chop your spine off talking to your lousy, filthy father like that." And the next page, Max says, "I always had the smell of a good horse. The fillies are more highly strung than the colts. They're more unreliable. I was always able to tell a good filly by one particular trick. I'd stand in front of her and look her straight in the eye. It was a kind of hypnotism. And by the look deep down in her eye, I could tell whether she was a stayer or not. I had a gift." A few lines later, Lenny says, "Dad, the dinner we had before, what was the name of it? You're a dog cook. You think you're cooking for a lot of dogs." Max says, "If you don't like it, get out." Lenny says, "You'll go before me, Dad, if you talk to me in that tone of voice." Max says, "Will I, you bitch?" He grips his stick. Lenny said, "Oh, Daddy, you're not going to use your stick on me, are you? It wasn't my fault, Daddy. It was one of the others. Don't clout me with that stick." Silence. A long silence. Scissors, plug, clout, smell. In 5 pages of unambiguously rich clues, Pinter gives the actor, the director, the designer, the very essence of the ferocious world into which another of Max's sons will arrive from America with his sexy new wife, who will prove a stayer. In building the world of our play, all the actor and director and designer can do is explore the life we have given them in our dialogue. Well, let's go to the top again. Let's look at the cherry orchard. Act 1. First stage direction. A room which is still known as the nursery. So look at this. The play opens not in the drawing room, not in the orchard. Chekhov opens it very pointedly in the nursery. What does that say about the emotional age of the citizens of this play? One of the doors leads to Anya's room, half light, shortly before sunrise. What an odd time Chekhov gives us. Neither day nor night. Stage direction goes on. It is May already, and the cherry trees are in blossom, but outside in the window it is cold with a morning frost. The windows are closed. Are they closed off from life? Enter Dunyasha with a candle and Lopakhin with a book in his hand. A book, a candle, these two ways of illumination. Lopakhin says, "God be praised, the train's arrived. What time is it?" The word time is placed front and center. Dunyasha says, "Nearly 2 o'clock." She extinguishes the candle. It's light already, and the lights are out. And now we're out of that mysterious half-light and into the real world of daylight. Lopakhin says, "So the train's late? 2 hours at least." He yawns and stretches. "Fine when I am. Complete fool. Came all the way here to go and meet them at the station and then just dropped off while I was sitting there. It's a shame. You might have woken me." Dunyasha says, "I thought you'd gone." Misperception. She listens. "That sounds like them now." Hope. They listen. Lopakhin says, "No, luggage to pick up, one thing or another. The matter-of-fact business of a day, the daily disappointment." There's a pause. He says, "She's lived abroad for 5 years now. I don't know what she'll be like now." She was a fine woman, easy, straightforward. I remember when I was a boy of 15 or so, my father, he kept a shop then in the village here, dead now, of course. He punched me in the face and the blood started to pour out of my nose. For some reason, we'd come into the yard together and he was drunk. It seems like yesterday. People living between the past and the present. She was only young, such a slim young thing. She brought me in and she took me to the washstand in this room, in this nursery, and she said, "Don't cry, my little peasant." Class, we already know the class structure of these people. It'll heal in time for your wedding. My little peasant, it's true, my father was a peasant. And here I am in a white waistcoat and yellow shoes, like a pig in a pastry cook's. The only difference is, I'm a rich man, plenty of money, but look twice and I'm a peasant, a real peasant. 5 times Chekhov puts the word peasant into the air. He leaps through the book. I was reading this book, couldn't understand a word. And Dunyasha says, and the dogs, they haven't slept all night. They can sense that the mistress is coming. The excitement that is built in. Lopakhin says, "What's the matter with you, Dunyasha?" And she says, "My hands are all of a tremble. I'm going to faint." Lopakhin says, "Well, a very tender plant, aren't you, Dunyasha? Dress like a lady. Do your hair like a lady, too. Not the way you do it. You want to remember who you are." And all the themes of Chekhov's great play are here in this first scene, in the first 5 pages of this scene. Time, the presence of time, the disappointment, false arrivals, misperceived motives, psychic violence, physical violence, matters of class, disappointment, everything that we'll be spending the next 3 hours with in this magnificent play. People ask me, why do you write plays? Why not novels? I write plays because of their very impossibility. The novelist has all the time in the world. You can write Gone with the Wind or War and Peace. A playwright must write his equivalent of a novel in 100 pages. That's what a play is, 99 pages. The play has a couple of hours to achieve its task. Imagine this. Imagine if a novel were written this way, that 500 people filed into a dark room, each were handed a manuscript and a flashlight, and were told at a certain time to open the book and to start reading. All 500 people must respond at the same time in the same way, and laugh as one, and be shocked as one, be moved as one. And then it's a few hours later, the lights come back on, you hand back your manuscript and the flashlight to the usher, and go back out into the night. The very impossibility of writing a play is what keeps dragging me back to it. How can I win the audience this time? Playwriting is a blood sport. We say when it works, we kill them tonight. We wipe them out. When we get rotten reviews, we say, "Oy, it was a massacre. They slaughtered us. They killed us." Playwriting is a bullfight. The playwright is the matador trying to bend the mad bull of an audience to his will. You out there to bend you into submission and make you, hundreds of strangers, behave as one unit. To laugh when I want you to laugh, to gasp when I want you to laugh, gasp, and then have the same emotional experience once, and then it comes out and we stand and we clap or don't. It's a nightmare writing a play, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The main tool the playwright has is dialogue, a series of tiles forming a seamless mosaic, and every tile counts. In building the world of our play, all the actor and director and designer and reader can do is to fully respond to those tiles, those clues that we, the playwrights, give them in our dialogue. So why be stingy? This is what I tell my students. Why be stingy? The last words of Henry James, that great novelist and failed playwright, were, "Be kind." I say a playwright's constant directive must be, above all, be generous. Know your world. Don't be afraid to be obvious in the clues you give out to the strangers who are reading your play. I'm really going to mix my metaphors. These tiles, these clues, are the life preservers we throw out for you, the audience, to hang on to until we bring you back to shore. Let's end this talk with Hamlet's instructing the players on how to speak the dialogue he's written to be inserted into their play, The Mousetrap. Hamlet says, "Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it, as many of our players do, I had as lief the town criers spoke my lines. Nor do not sow the air too much with your hand." Wait, is it right for one playwright, even if he is Prince of Denmark, to insert new dialogue into another playwright's work? Isn't this a matter for the Dramatists Guild Council? But that's for another talk about protecting your copyright. Thank you so much. Now, are there any questions? I mean, about, I was just... Oh, you can call it out here. We can...
Call it out.
Yes. You were writing, you speak, because you were sitting in the front row taking copious notes, so you have to speak. You have to ask a question. No, just stand up and talk. We don't have to.
I don't have a question, but I'd like to share with you how another writer dealt with Montana place names. Dashiell Hammett wrote the great novel Red Harvest, based probably on his experiences as a private detective.
Dashiell Hammett was from Montana?
No, but he worked as a private detective, busting unions and so forth, in Butte and Phillipsburg. And in Red Harvest, the action takes place in a town called Personville, but some people call it Poisonville.
Well, that's very Brooklyn, yes. Okay, well, thank you for sharing. Yes, sir.
You spoke an awful lot about dialogue, but I found some of your most haunting work to be in your monologues. You and your contemporary Sam Shepard. God, I'm hearing a couple in my head right now. Yes. Do you approach that any differently than you do the dialogue between your characters? Is there any particular way that you take to approach those incredible image pictures that you paint with talking about monologue?
Well, I don't think of them as monologues. I think them as something that it's like a song. I mean, that's the point where whatever the emotional temperature is beneath, it forces that person to speak at length. It's still, he is telling this, it's a dialogue if either with you in the audience or with himself or with the other person on stage. It just takes longer to say. The person has more to say. I think a monologue becomes deadly when it is just in isolation and it's just for itself. A monologue only works when the audience knows what their role in it is. That, to me, is the most extraordinary thing about what the role, that's something I've been working on, teaching my students about, what the role of an audience is. I went to see, a long time ago, I went to see a Tom Stoppard play, and it was called The Real Thing, and it was just brilliant, it was just wonderful. And in the middle of the second act, a woman said out loud, in lieu of nothing, she just said, "I feel so witty." And we all laughed at her because she sort of, but what was true was, we said, oh, I understand. Tom Stoppard's genius is that he gives us the gift, not that he is being clever and witty, but he is, as does Oscar Wilde, that we are the witty ones who can appreciate it and can say it. So if we just see some smart-ass playwright spouting all these fancy lines, you'll just say, well, yeah, okay, next. What else? It only acts, the dialogue, whether it's a monologue, only a monologue or a brilliant one-liner like Chekhov's No, they each have the same value, that they are giving it's emotional information that you, those strangers out there, know, to help you put on that costume that the play is conferring on you. So if we are in a Pinter play, we feel very sexy and dangerous. At least I do. I think that's his genius, that he makes us feel really sinister and mysterious and very superior, and we're going to kill you somehow. And we feel we are given a new world. A bad play, especially a play, I can't talk about movies so much, but it works in film anytime where there's an audience and something in front of us. It only works when we in the audience know what our relationship to it is. And I really just don't, that is what costume we're putting on, what costume that puts on us. Tennessee Williams makes us in the audience. What is brilliant about something like Streetcar Named Desire is that he gives us two costumes to wear, why it's very complex to wear, because he makes us understand the sensitivity of Blanche and makes us be Blanche. For every time that the world has ignored me and I've been at my wit's end, I don't know where to go anymore. I have nowhere to go. This is the end of the line for me. We are there. We say that's the costume. I'm with you, Blanche. It's not identification. It's literally putting on Blanche's role. And at the same token, what's brilliant about Tennessee Williams is the yin and the yang, that he also makes us be Stanley, the brute, the beast who won't take any of our shit, and makes us say, I wish I had that power. I wish I had that sexual power over people. I wish I could be that bully. I wish I could go through life like that. I mean, that's what Brando captured. We want to be that, and we want to be Blanche. We're given two rival costumes to wear. I think that's part of the life of that play. What will make that play immortal play is that we, the audience, are asked to be two separate people, not identify with two, not to watch two separate people, but we understand both those people. We understand all the people in the play, and it heightens our sensitivity. I think if we were talking, when I was talking about that maybe what I'm talking about, this little arcane microscope on my small world, which is enormous for me, but what it might have to do with China and the United Nations and Hitler and the ecology, is that what these little tiles of dialogue are trying to do, this role that it gives us, what the role of it is to increase our awareness, to make us alive, to make us responsive to the world around us. That's why we go to the theater, to hear, not just to hear truth, but to hear that kind where we become heightened individuals. We are more receptive. We understand more. We feel deeper. If we go to a Beethoven, we hear the anguish of a Beethoven or a Mahler concert, you say, yes, that's me. I am capable of feeling that. That's why it's still being played in concert halls hundreds of years later, because it awakens the highest part of ourselves. Not the highest, most noblest part, but the part of ourselves that is most aware. And when Jung said the greatest sin is to be unconscious. And I think most of us go through our lives unconscious. This terrible campaign now, this political campaign, people say, I'm dead, I'm turned off, I can't listen to it anymore. Will it ever end? We are no longer being heightened to it. We're not living in the sense of, how am I going to make my choice? People are just saying, click off and I'll make my decision at the last moment, or not vote at all. And I think this is what I'm talking about, this role of finding the play, listening to the play, becoming more responsive to the piece of art that we are being given, increases our awareness. That is the purpose of it. I mean, that in a sense is the most. Somebody asked me yesterday, one of the kids asked me yesterday, and said, how do you write political theater? Shouldn't plays be politic? And I said, well, politics come and go, and usually, you'll go see a political play about a side you agree with, and you'll say, yeah, I agree with that, so it's preaching to the choir. But I think, in a sense, the most political thing that a work of art can do is to make you more sensitive, to make you more aware, and I don't mean in a delicate way, but I mean to make you more sensitive, to make you listen. That's what the purpose of this speech is about, is to say, just don't say, oh, a play is just a bunch of lines of dialogue. To say that every word in that play is telling you something, is giving you It's almost like the Kabbalah. It's making us see another world, how we see the world beneath the words, beneath these little banal things. How Pinter uses, or Chekhov uses, no miraculous words. We just say, wow, what fantastic vocabulary he has. I mean, that's really language of the streets. But because of the way that they're ordered, because of the way the images come together, we see these extraordinary universes beneath the words, whether it's a world of psychic violence in Pinter, or the world of regret and loss and the tragedy of people not being able, people who are not awakened to life. That's what Chekhov is the great poet of. He's writing about people who are unaware of life, passing them by. And those moments come in just in bits of flashes where it's too late to act. So that's what yes, I've sort of forgotten, I forgot what your question was.
Well, I'm glad I hit the button. Just one final personal comment. Atlantic City, Burt Lancaster's description of Fish and Lemons. That is one of my favorite moments. And I thank you for that. I won't call it on that is a particular speech describer.
Well, how that came from, my mother-in-law had given me a book on Eloise's household hints. And when I realized Susan Sarandon was going to be playing a girl who was opening clams, I said, she must get fishy smell. How do you get rid of that fish? And so Eloise said in her household hints, rub lemons over the part of your body that the fish comes in contact with. So that's for that. But I love that. Thank you. It was a very happy experience in my life. It was great. Yes. Yes, sir. I see you in the back. Not at all. Oh, the question is, he said, here in Missoula that there is the local theater, in addition to the Department of Drama and Dance here, there's also a local theater that does a lot of musicals. And do I see any, as a playwright, do I see any difference between those two worlds? Not at all. Not at all. Anytime you've got a curtain going up on people in the space here, and people, we bring our same, we bring the same pair of eyes to it, and the role of that show is to adjust our expectations. I mean, I've worked on musicals. I mean, in 1971 we were asked, a friend of mine was going to do, Mel Shapiro, who Greg talked about before, was asked by Joe Papp at the Public Theater, would he direct in Central Park? In Manhattan, we have in Central Park, there's a thing called the Delacorte Theater, where they do free Shakespeare every summer, free. And then one of those plays is taken on a truck around to the 5 boroughs. And Joe said to Mel, he said, it's time to do Two Gentlemen of Verona, which may be Shakespeare's first play. Will you do that on stage? Will you do that and do it on the truck around the city? Well, Mel came to me and he said, I'm sort of frightened. He said, I've been asked to do Two Gentlemen of Verona. And he said, I don't mind doing it in the park, but he said, we're going to put it on a truck. And he said, last year they did the Scottish play, Macbeth is bad luck to say. And the actors, in the middle of it, they had to run for cover because the audience out in the streets attacked them with rocks and guns and broken bottles, and they had to flee for their lives, and the performances couldn't. He said, that was Macbeth. He said, what'll happen if we bring this little comedy about courtly sentiments on love up to 125th Street in the middle of a hot summer day? They'll get out the machine guns. And so the problem, we said, well, let's make that a problem. Let's figure out how to do it. So he asked me if I would cut the play down to 90 minutes. And it was knowing our audience. We made the play, and also Galt McDermott, who had written the score for Hair, was going to be the resident composer at the park that summer, so he would sign on to do a couple of songs. And we had the idea, I had the idea to have songs that would act like, because the play is shot through with this most ravishing poetry. But if we could use songs, lyrics, that would act as almost like pre-subtitles, that the meaning of what you're about to hear is put in a very pop rock tune. So then the audience will have the meaning in their ears and can just listen to the wonder of the verse without becoming self-conscious, saying, what the hell are they talking about? Well, those songs, we ended up with 32 songs, and it played out on the street, and it was a triumph, and it was thrilling. And then it moved indoors for it ran for 2 years and won the Tony for Best Musical. And that was a play that had found its audience. And what we'd also decided to use, and this was also very revolutionary back then, because we were playing a park in every parks all around the 5 boroughs of New York, we made sure that we had somebody from every neighborhood cast in the play. So in a Shakespeare play, for the first time in a major Shakespeare play, we had blacks and Latinos and Asians and India. We just had everybody and some white people too. We had everybody was represented on that stage. And somehow what we did inadvertently unlocked it was a very healing summer. Coming there, the audience who the year before had attacked Macbeth and threatened the actors' lives, now welcomed us. And we were welcomed indoors for 2 years, and to London and around the world. And so I think that the same rules that you apply to the nobility that you confer on an audience. You can't say, oh, just because it's a musical, I can trash the audience. They'll take any piece of crap. They won't. They won't. About 9 years ago, I had a great experience. I was asked, there was a great old musical called Kiss Me, Kate. And the book was very, very dated. And I was asked by the director of English, great director Michael Blakemore, if I would redo the book for it. Well, my role was not to rewrite the book in that case, but just to make it appear what it would be like. There were so many references that an audience would have got in 1949 when Kiss Me, Kate opened. That Bernard Baruch, who knows Bernard Baruch jokes? It was clearing through the play and bringing it up to a modern sensibility, which is more fast-paced and had less topical jokes, but would give the audience, you out there, the experience that this is what they were seeing in 1949. And that was a really terrific success. It was a great thing to do. So last November, I was asked, because of the work on Kiss Me, Kate, if I would take another old musical and write a new book for it. This one needed a lot of help. And it was playing in Poison today, Brigadoon. So I did something in December, and we go into rehearsal in August with it. But it's about what that audience will accept. It's about saying it's not pandering to the audience. It's about saying, what does the material that I have here, what is the effect? Because the theatrical event doesn't happen on the stage nobly, or it doesn't happen out there in your heads intellectually. It happens in this really magic Wagnerian golden bridge between the people on stage and you out there in the audience. And that's when we've had a successful time, when we were allowed to enter into the inner world of that play on stage. And we in the audience, we on stage can enter into your minds, and you can just feel that magic when it's happening. So I feel that one must not be snooty whether you're doing a silly musical or whether you're doing Cherry Orchard. You have to give the audience the costume. You have to give the audience the proper costume that says, you know what, tonight you're going to be really dopey. And you must honor that, and to say we're going to be in Scotland and you're going to be silly, and and you're 100 years old, 200 years old, and nobody knows it. You have to treat that with the same. You have to treat that with the same seriousness, whether it's something giddy, whether it's importance of being earnest, or whether it's King Lear. You have to let the audience know their role in what is the intention on the stage, or else, because if you're not included, there's no purpose for you to be there. And that is what's maddening, the thing that you're trying to capture at all times that you can't predict. Yes, right behind you.
The comment about the campaign suggests to me that in a way, during the play going on, each candidate received the same line over and again.
Yes.
But they are finding an audience, and those of us who've been following it regularly or we're sick of it, but in each place it finds an audience. For example, right now the Indiana primary, where it's the first time in 40 years there's been a presidential candidate there. And the people are going in droves to register in referendum.
Well, also, obviously, Republicans are posing, taking on the role of Democrats.
But in Montana, the same way, we don't know anything in detention here. It's all of New York, so we are now the audience that's taking into
Well, it's saying, what costume do you want to put on? When, you know, it's so interesting seeing posters from 1992 with Clinton and Gore, these young guys, and saying against Papa Bush, saying, vote your hopes, don't vote your fears. And that was the campaign slogan in 1992. Here it is all these years later. Now it's reversed. As time goes on, they're saying, vote your fears. That's what they must give you. One part of the campaign is making us say, oh, I'm unprotected. I need the help of a strong former president and about to be and a would-be president. You know, I need that help. The world is too scary. I must vote for this person. And another person who's saying, why not just trust in the best of the world? Why not see what happens? Why not just try? And those are the two warring, like Stanley and Blanche. We're being, although with a sex change, sex reverses. I love that, yes, I love that. Hillary Kowalski and Barack Dubois, I like that. But it's very true, but that is the theater that we live in. I mean, that is the theater of life, the Teatro Mundi, the theater of the world, that we are always being, whether it's an ad campaign. We are saying, a friend of mine had lived out of America for many, many years and came back to America a few years ago. And I said, what is the biggest change that you notice in America? I mean, what's it like? Well, she said, you know what's odd? She said, all the commercials that I see, they're always the husband saying, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. And the wife saying into the camera, he thinks he's eating butter. And she said, it's as if you're all being fooled, as if, you know, you're in on something. That's being given the rule, where in the audience you're given the role that I know what the truth is. I know what the truth is. It's so interesting to say what role is being, and that's a part of the heightened awareness that I want to make us aware of, is to say, what is being asked of me, so I won't be swept along. It's what Brecht is saying, why there should be some distancing effect so our emotions won't travel, we won't be swayed by the emotions of what it is how we're being pled to. But to say, oh, I see, I can be swept along by the emotions, but still keep my mind in an aware state where I can say, oh, this is baloney, or this is good, this is true. And so it's so interesting, this campaign. I don't think it's ever been so black or white. No pun intended again, about where roles are being on the electorate, on the voters in each state, are being given such clear costumes to be asked to put on. Does that answer your question?
The idea that each time the play moves from one place to another, they are finding an audience.
Yes. And which audience will win? Which audience will win? Yes, sir.
I love
Which play? Hold it up. Oh, great.
I've admired her for many years. And I just like to maybe give us a little insight into the process of what I thought was amazing thread of hierarchy.
Well, I think the one thing in the play is the play 6 Degrees of Separation, which is about a young man who stabs himself to get into a family on the Upper East Side, to get into their lives, because he's been an outsider for so long. Or maybe he hasn't. And he tells them he's Sidney Poitier's son, and is a friend of their children, and they take him in because he's one of them. And then they find out that he's not. And their betrayal, what to do with that sense of betrayal, and who is authentic and who is not. One of the key things is that there's a lot of direct address in the play to the audience. And when Stockard Channing was taking over, she said, why am I talking to the audience so much? I mean, why the play talked about your monologues. She said, all these monologues to the audience. I said, they're not monologues, Susie. What they are is, the audience is your best friend. They're your 4 a.m. friend that you can call up and confide in all your hopes and your fears and tell your secrets to. They're your best friends. Oh, she said, oh, I can play that. I know how to do that. Yes. And so that's what it was. It wasn't just somebody reciting the play to the audience. It was about giving you out there the role of her best friend, her intimate, somebody who understands her, somebody who will go where she's going, will follow her. The process of the play, I find it very hard to talk about the process of a play because I've already done it, and and it's like for other people to talk about the process. I mean, to me, it was very simple. The play was written in the order in which it was written. It was a very rare play for me. That and Blue Leaves were two plays that I started down and started writing a play, and I wrote them until I finished them, and I didn't know where either play was going, and so it's a play where I trusted my unconscious. I trusted that I was telling. I trusted myself. I trusted that was the play. I didn't feel lost. I felt my footing was very, very firm in the play. And sometimes we have those very rare times in our lives, where you just feel you're on to a piece of crystal and it goes bing, and you can't help but every time you say, yeah, I made the right choice, yes. A lot of places you can be going, well, great, and you made a wrong turn, you've got to go back and reverse. This was a play where I just knew where I was going. It was a blessed time. But it was a kind of play that I only got from writing a lot of other plays, to have a structure, an unconventional structure in my head that I could create as I was going along. And I think one of the things that's interesting about the play, maybe, is I was watching it. They did it at the Guthrie a couple of years ago, and I couldn't remember what was happening next. I said, what comes next? And, oh, I forgot that, yes. And I have the feeling that the play, if it works in a successful production, you have the feeling that it's being written for the first time, then and there. It is being improvised in front of you. And that, I think, is that the structure of the play is secret, is invisible, and we feel that we are with people, that we're learning things as they learn them. And so the audience is given a sense of trust that they can keep up. And when we made the film, we literally personified the audience as we saw them dining out on the story, because you can't talk into the camera and have the same effect. We saw them in the movie, Stockard Channing and Donald Sutherland, literally dining out on the story of this adventure that they found themselves in the middle of. And we saw their rise in society, thanks to people wanting to hear how the story turned out. So that was the main difference between what a movie can do, where movies are essentially naturalistic, and a play which is essentially poetic. And the sense of poetry comes from being able to talk to a room full of strangers and say, I'm going to tell you what I'm going through right now, and knowing that they will be heard. We don't have to witness it on stage. What's more interesting is what's happening between me and you right now, rather than me talking to somebody on stage and answering your question that way, with that oblique way, as you'd have to do in a film. Does that answer? So process is if I knew what, you don't understand what the process is until you finish it. And the minute you're conscious of your process while you're in the middle of it, you've failed, because you're regurgitating, you're chewing old meat. So yes, there was somebody in the back with that hand up right there.
I want to ask, I guess, a process question, which was two. One was how much dialogue you write compared to how much you use in those 99 pages. How many more pages are there that we don't see? And the second was just how much you work on the situation prior or in complement with the dialogue.
I don't understand the last question.
The setting, characters, what their situation is coming into the play. Do you write dialogue to discover who they are, or is that?
Every play is different. I'm involved in a play right now that I'll tell you something, talk about a process. Something happened to me about 35 years ago that I always thought it was a mysterious situation that I was in. A very mysterious situation that I got caught in. I won't say any more than that, but I always said this would be a very good a really interesting play if I knew what happened to these people. It took place in a week's period of time. And I never understood what happened. It began, it was tumultuous, and then it was over. And I never saw any of the people involved in it again. And I never knew what happened. And I said, well, I can't write the play because I don't know what happened. I mean, it was a mystery. I couldn't write it because it was such a mystery. It's so weird how things work out My wife was in Washington, D.C., and she was giving a talk, and she's a historic preservationist, and a man came up to her and he said, "Are you married to John Guare?" And she said, "Oh, yes, I am." He said, "It's funny, I was involved in a situation with him 35 years ago." She said, "On Nantucket?" He said, "Yes." She said, "He's been looking for you." And all these years later, we got together, and I found out all the truth of what was happening, what happened at the time, what happened to the people after, the mysterious things. It was such a great situation. I wish I could tell it to you, but I can't because I'm still in the middle of writing it. But I said, I can write this play now. I can write this play. And I sat down and I wrote the play as it happened to me with the information at the end of what happened to it. Well, I wrote it down. This also answers your question about how much dialogue do you need. And the play wrote very quickly. And I read it and I said, this is so dead. And why was it dead? Because it was something that had happened to me. And in writing it out, I had left myself out of the story. It was all through my point of view. But I had left nobody knew you. In reading it, you wouldn't know who the lead character was, that all these events were happening, who was made this passive witness to these events. You didn't know who he was. So suddenly, I said, well, it was so depressing, I thought I would just toss this off. And I had to go back, and what I had to invent was, I had to invent a lead character who was me, a fictional character called me, that would not be passive, that would be able to control, to make his wonderment at what this event was that he was trapped in, to make it understandable to you, the audience, to make it how I am telling the story to. And it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, was to write a character who was me, where it was a real situation in which I knew how to write everybody else in this story, but I had no idea how to write me. I'm wrestling with that. What you need, who am I, gets to be the key thing. And it's so dangerous. That's why I love a poetic story where you can play around with it and fiddle with it. This I have to tell exactly as it happened for its effect to happen. But the main character was, what do you need to know who I am, what the emotional state is of the character that's called the I of the play, the lead character in the play, which vainly is me. I never want to write a play with me in it again. But it's a nightmare. I must say it's a nightmare where the dialogue has to, where I have to make what my mental state is, the state that got me into the situation, more importantly, what kept me in it, and why I didn't leave it. And it was gruesome. It was a real nightmare situation. And so the story gets to be, what would you do in this situation? Well, I knew what you would do. I didn't know what I would do. And the fact that I did nothing, how I dramatize that is part of the process that I'm going through right now. Because I have to make me understandable to you. And so that's what I'm in the middle of right now. So sometimes you can write 50 pages of dialogue and end up with one sentence. Sometimes you can write a most brilliant passage. Okay, I'll tell you about a brilliant scene. This is a friend of mine. There's a wonderful man named Garson Kanin who wrote a play called Born Yesterday. This is an old story, but I'm an old guy, so I can tell these old stories. And he was asked to direct a new play called The Diary of Anne Frank. And what everybody loved in this play, The Diary of Anne Frank, there was a scene where the father is talking to his young 14-year-old daughter, and he said, if we were out of this attic, what would be the first thing you would do? Oh, she said, I would go to Paris and I would have my hair done by the fanciest hairdresser in town like I see in the movie magazines. That's what I would do when this war is over. That's where I will go. And he said, well, why wait? Let's not do it right now. Let's do it right now. And there's a charming scene where the father puts on a white coat and he puts a towel over his arm and he welcomes his daughter Anne to his beauty parlor and asks her what hair she would like to have. And in pretend he gives her a hairstyle like some movie star, Ginger Rogers or something would have. And at the end, without changing anything, she looked herself in the mirror and said, I'm this war was, it's just wonderful. Anyway, everybody loved this play. It was a famous it had been, it attracted people to the play. And there was a man named Joseph Schildkraut who was asked to play Otto Frank. And he said, I will do this play only for that scene. I have to do that scene. It's a 20-minute scene where I play the barber to Anne. And heartbreaking. And so the play opened out of town, and it was great. We got a great response, except it was 20 minutes too long. And they asked Garson Kane, they said, the playwrights, they said, you have to cut the play. And the two playwrights, Francis Goodrich and Albert Hackett, said, we don't know where to cut it. I mean, this is our masterpiece. This is our play. I mean, we don't know where to cut it. He said, we have to get 20 minutes out of it. It's overtime with the stage hands, all those, I mean, the audience is just long, but we just have to get it. It's over 3 hours. It's just too long. And Garson took the play home, and he said, you know what? He came in one morning, and he said, I've cut 20 minutes out of the play. I've removed the haircutting scene. And the cast was in an uproar. They said, but that's why we did the play. That's the best scene in the play. He said, remove that scene. It doesn't accomplish anything. It's a brilliant scene, but it doesn't tell us anything that we don't know. And Joseph Schildkraut said, I'm quitting the play. And the producer said, we're closing the play down. He said, let me just try it at the matinee. Let me try it at the matinee in Philadelphia. So they went up and they just said, okay, we'll go from scene 8 to scene 10. And the play was 20. Nobody ever noticed the scene was missing because the center of the play was so powerful that it expelled the scene that it didn't need. It was too much. The scene was telling us too much. The actors were already doing what that scene was dramatizing. And it was never brought up again. And the scene was never in the final scene. It was never published. It was just a lost scene, but a brilliant scene. An audience will tell you, you can be working on a play. You can have a play where an actor can get, you can give a long page and the actor will say to you, you know, I can get here quicker. And you say, but I love this page of dialogue. You say, yeah, but I can get from there to there quicker. It's better for me. The other is just a hold. It's just fancy writing. And you know what? You have to cut it because the actor can make that leap. Or if an actor says, you're asking me to go from there to there and I need more. I need more to fill it up. Stage poetry is so, and I call it poetry because it is so unique and so to the point. Again, an old story. There was a play, there was a very famous old Audrey Hepburn movie called Sabrina. You've seen that movie, maybe, or it's so old, maybe black and white, maybe nobody sees it anymore. But this to me is what the definition of theater writing can be, the lesson learned. It was written for, it's about a young chauffeur's daughter who goes to Paris and comes back, and she's glamorous and beautiful, and the master's sons fall in love with her, and they vie to make her, you know, it's a double Cinderella story. Which Prince Charming will get her? And they hoped that they wrote this play, which is very funny and lovely, and they hoped that they would find a new young star, a new 21, 22-year-old girl, as they would with Audrey Hepburn in the movie. On stage, you could play it. And this is before the movie. And they could not find an actress to cast the part. They could not find an enchanting 23-year-old to play the chauffeur's daughter. And they couldn't go on. They were booked at the theater. The theater was already booked. It was ready to go. And one of the producers was married to a great actress, now forgotten, named Margaret Sullivan, who had been Tennessee Williams' first choice to play Blanche Dubois, but she didn't play it. And they went to Margaret Sullivan and they said, will you play Sabrina? We need you to play it. She said, I'm 45 years old. She said, they'll stone me. Talk about Macbeth. You know, she said, they'll stone me if I play this 23-year-old chauffeur's daughter. And the playwright said, let me solve this. And how did he solve it? She starred in the play, opened in the play, and it was an enormous success and was sold to the movies and made Audrey Hepburn the story. But what was it? What did the playwright do to his play to make it possible for a 45-year-old woman to play a 23-year-old ingenue? Can you imagine what he did? The Play opened up, he didn't change any dialogue in the play. Play opened up, black stage, there was a pin spot on Margaret Sullivan's face. And she said to the audience, she said, once upon a time, in the kingdom of Long Island, there lived a beautiful young princess, and her name was Sabrina. And the lights were up, and she went on. It went on. That's because the audience said, yeah, I buy it. That's who she is. It was that poetic leap that could not happen in the film, could not happen on film, but can happen on stage with that bit of stage poetry, transform that 45-year-old woman into a 23-year-old who did not act any differently. We in the audience said, I buy this. I'm in a fairy tale. It was a brilliant, that to me is a model of what stage poetry is, the concision of it, because it involves you in the audience. And we must always, and I'll end on this note, we must always demand that we are included in the process. We can't have, as you pick up about this campaign, a role thrust upon us and said, this is all you are. You are afraid or you are hopeful. This is it. This is it. That's fascism. And I mean that. That's where we are told who we are. But the generosity of the theater is to say, this is who I want you to be. Come along with me. You can elect not to go on the trip. But when it works together and the audience is all bound together, we're given that role of saying, yes, I will willingly take on the role to enter the world of this play. Because the play generously has given me enough clues, tiles, to be like a detective and to say, what is my role in this play? Where am I this evening? We know when we see something, we just said, God, it wouldn't be for me. It was just like passed in front of my eyes. You know, it just was, I just sat there like I was waiting for a train. No, what we elect to be persuaded of, I think, is the key to a spiritual life in America today. How's that for an ending? Bye. Okay. And now they're going to sign books out front, so if anybody wants to buy one or two or steal one, it's Abby Hoffman's. Yes, it's, anyway, I'll be out back. Thank you.